question. What is the number one killer of squirrels? Any idea?
Electric lines.
Electric lines, yes. Anyone else? Cars. Indecision. Thank you. Indecision. You've seen this. There's a little squirrel running across the road. He's going for that tree where he buried those nuts last fall. And you know, that's what squirrels do. They run around, they chase each other, and they chase nuts. They look for nuts. Now, if that sounds like your workplace, that is no coincidence. So, you know, a squirrel is going across the road. He sees this car barreling down on him. And his little squirrel brain has three choices. Freeze, fight, or flight. That's it. That's all his little squirrel brain can muster up. So if he freezes, he knows he can't fight, so he freezes. And in that moment, he doesn't take the third option, which is flight, bam, he's roadkill. You know, this is why we see so many dead squirrels in the road, because they're operating from what I call the reptilian brain. This is the amygdala. This is the part of the brain that almost all species on the earth share. But unfortunately, the squirrel is functioning almost exclusively from this place. So he has three choices: fight, flight, or freeze. A really very severe version of what I call this default brain is the rainbow lizard. If a male rainbow lizard goes into the territory of another male rainbow lizard, they actually have two default choices. And that is to flee or to fight to the death. Two choices. So what does this have to do with leadership? Well, unfortunately, it seems that we're seeing a number of people who are functioning in leadership roles that are functioning almost exclusively from this default place, this part of our brain that we call the amygdala. I call it the reptilian brain. They're basically living in the default. So, and this is the majority of people. So really, what's the problem then? I mean, if the majority of people are living from the default, what harm can come from that? Well, let me give you an example. Imagine that your esteemed leader is functioning from this place, and he's functioning from the feelings of fear or anxiety or defensiveness. And he has only three options: to freeze, fight, or flight. How comfortable are you? What is the scenario? Let's extend that. This esteemed leader is the solo pilot of the jet you are flying in. How comfortable are you now? This is something that we talk about all the time. I'm a bit of a brain geek, so I spend a lot of time thinking about how the brain works and helping my clients transcend the default. And the reason why, there really are only three species that we've studied extensively that have what we call the new brain. It's called the neocortex. It's the part of the brain that is most newly evolved. It's that gray matter that you see when you look at the picture of a brain. You see that sort of wrinkly gray matter. That's the neocortex. It turns out about 76% of brain volume in humans is made up of this neocortex. This is the newer, more evolved, nimbler part of the brain, which is associated with decision-making, higher consciousness, and creativity. It turns out there's only a few species on Earth that have the ability to craft creative responses to stimuli. And that's human beings, dolphins, and African elephants. Those are the ones that we know about and we've studied. So the rest of us are basically operating on the default, on the reptilian brain. And I want to show you how that plays out. I have a very high-tech visual here that I'd like to show you. To give you an idea about what happens when we operate from the default. So what I've got here is I have two response patterns. The first one at the top is called the catabolic response pattern. The one at the bottom is called the anabolic response pattern. And I'll describe what catabolic and anabolic means in just a minute, but I want you to take a look at what these look like. Everything starts with a trigger. Now, in dramatic terms, we're in a theater here, in dramatic terms, you might call this the inciting incident, but I like to call it the trigger. And that's anything that sort of sparks you. It might be something that somebody says or does. It sort of just rubs you the wrong way. And you get into that default, that sort of fearful place, that defensive place, that feeling of being annoyed. That is the trigger. And immediately, in the catabolic response, you go into a default behavior. That's the reptilian brain at work. The anabolic response pattern, same trigger, but there's something different inserted there before the response, and that is what I call the pause point. This is the magic moment. This is the chance where we get to, by virtue of choice, take a moment to pause and craft a creative response to the stimuli. This is the amygdala, this is the neocortex at work. The amygdala doesn't have the ability to pause. It's the squirrel. It's the lizard. It goes immediately into habitual default behavior. And we don't know what the outcome is. Well, if you're a lizard and a male comes into your territory, one lizard dies. If you're a squirrel and you don't flee in that moment, best case scenario, you lose the tail. But more often than not, you're the main course for the turkey vulture that's circling overhead. So the difference, to get yourself into this neocortex place, again, is the trigger. And this comes with awareness. This comes with an intention. Again, going back to the power of choice. When you are aware of where you are, you'll get the trigger. And a person who's aware, a person who knows what their hot buttons are, a person who is aware of the feelings that come up when you're in that default zone, which is generally fear or annoyance, you start to recognize, you go, whoa, 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 there's that trigger, there's that hot button. And there's that fear and that anxiety and that anxiousness and that feeling. And that's your cue to take the pause. The pause point is the point where you decide how you want to show up by choice. And there's a couple ways to do that. I use the acronym ABC. The first strategy, basically, is awareness. Being aware that I have a choice. I'm not a squirrel, I'm a human being. I have a choice about what to do in this pass point. And it's just sort of an awareness of being careful about how you're judging the situation. So a lot of non-judgment. You really want to get into a place of sort of awareness, but not judging it particularly. The second thing, the B, is breath. This is a really easy one, and this is the one I work with my clients a lot with, particularly in highly charged situations, in conflict-ridden situations, where, man, this is what I do, is it's basically a simple breath where you inhale for 4 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you hold it for 2 or 3, 1, 2, and exhale for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That simple breath is a lifesaver. It's going to get you out of the reptilian brain and into the neocortex by virtue of breath. It's really tough for that squirrel default to kick in when you're taking that breath. The other strategy is the C in ABC. It's centering. How many people here have done any martial arts or yoga in the room? How many people have? So you're familiar with centering. Okay, good. Centering is important. A simple change in posture can get your brain out of the default, out of the reptilian brain, into the neocortex, the more creative part of your brain. But sometimes you have to do a physical movement before your brain catches up. So I like to do sort of a mountain pose. A mountain pose in yoga is very, very strong pose. It's feet centered, shoulders back, palms open, head high, breathe. Mountain pose. Now you may not have an opportunity to do all of these three things at once. Maybe you have to pick and choose, and that's where that neocortex comes in. You get to be creative about this, how you use the pause point. And it depends on the situation. It's very situational. Certain things will work. For me, what really works best, and this is outside of the ABC acronym, is a question. A question. And that question is, how is my highest self choosing to respond right now? How is my highest self choosing to respond? Or another question you can ask yourself is, am I a human being or a squirrel? Am I a human being or a squirrel? Or another great question is something like, what's going on here? Because what's going on here is a question that gets you out of the thick of things into being an observer of what the situation is. What's happening here? What's going on here? Well, I'm feeling a little bit anxious. I'm feeling a little bit annoyed. And I feel that default response kicking in. But I know I have the power of choice. So what am I going to do? How am my highest self choosing to respond right now? So those are three very different types of strategies that you can do with the pause point. And the reason why I label this catabolic response pattern and anabolic response pattern is because I'm an energy person. I work with energy leadership. I'm an energy leadership master practitioner. So I speak in terms of energy. And let me describe what catabolic and anabolic means in terms of energy. Catabolic energy is energy that harms or hurts or is negative or demotivates. Anabolic energy is energy that is positive, that heals, that empowers. And you've seen this. You know this energy. You know the difference. Let me give you an example. Here's catabolic energy. This is anabolic energy. So, you know the difference. You can feel it. You've got people in the room anywhere you go. You go to the grocery store, you go to your office, you go anywhere. In a meeting, you're going to see the anabolic people and you're going to see the catabolic people. There's actually an energy leadership index, an assessment that you can take that shows you typically how you show up. Are you anabolic typically, or are you catabolic? And that's helpful. But the reality is that you're never 100% catabolic or anabolic at any given time. It usually happens where you're a little bit anabolic sometime during the day and a little bit of catabolic the other time. But the awareness is important. And what it basically allows you to do is basically choose how you want to show up. The way to shift from catabolic energy to anabolic energy is to be in that awareness space and to be able to use that pause point effectively in your life. It's really interesting. We've learned so much about the brain. It's amazing. The brain is the most amazing tool, amazing computer, amazing machine ever invented. I don't know, who can we give it credit to? God, the universe, whatever. It's an amazing thing. But the curious thing about the brain is nobody has yet to find the specific point in the brain that makes decisions for us. We are the decision maker. The brain facilitates decision making. The brain allows us to weigh options. The brain gives us, lets us process information, but our brain does not make the decisions for us. We are the decision maker. I came across a really interesting book this year, written by Greg Kuhn, who is an educator and a futurist. It's titled, Why Quantum Physicists Do Not Fail. And it's a lot about quantum physics, but really what I love about this book is it reminds us that the real you is not your brain. And I'm going to quote a little bit of it from this book. He says, modern science has yet to find any part of your brain where decisions are made, only where they are carried out. Yet there is no doubt that there exists a you who is making decisions for your brain and the rest of your body to execute. This means that the real you, the you that decides, is a non-physical energy. Call this energy what you will, God, spirit, universe, whatever, the quantum field. The real you is non-physical, and that is becoming more difficult to deny. I have another word for this energy. I call it mind. I imagine that mind is separate from the brain, and mind has the perception of options. And mind has the ability to basically craft any number of responses, creative responses to a trigger. And the great thing about that is you can choose. You have the power to choose how you show up. We are the masters of our brain, not the other way around. We are the mastermind. So I want to remind you today and every day that in every day and every moment, you have the ability to craft a creative response to stimuli. And every day and every moment, you get to choose how you want to show up. That's an incredibly powerful point of power, is that realization. So the next time when somebody really pisses you off, you can go into the squirrel mode, you can go into the reptile mode, or you can let your higher self choose how you want to show up. And the wonderful thing is you get to choose. Thank you.